Hello and welcome to week 1, Getting Started, for the course in Action, Integration Framework for SAP Business One. My name is Mario Fetzner, and in this unit I will tell you how the integration framework works. When completing this unit, you are able to describe the use of extensible markup language, XML, in the integration framework and list the main payload types in an XML message. We introduced scenarios in the previous unit. The scenario is essentially a container for one or more steps. The logic for the integration is implemented at a step level. Each step represents a specific integration flow of data, for example, from a sender system to a receiver system, or a request to an application or service with a response. If the flow of data is very simple, only one step is needed. If the flow of data is complex, you can break it down into multiple steps. Each step responds to a trigger, which might be a timer, an event from SAP Business One, or call from an external system sender. The step executes when triggered. You can also trigger a step by calling it from another step. Steps are either asynchronous or synchronous. An asynchronous step transmits data from a sender system to a receiver system. A synchronous step makes a request to another system or receives a request from another system. There is no receiver system involved. Note, the step can perform other processing in addition to the transmission of data. You will see examples of this in weeks 2 to 4. A scenario step, when triggered, runs as 3 different phases. The first phase is the inbound phase. In the inbound phase, calls or events retrieves the data from the sender using a predefined adapter. The adapter is selected when the scenario step is defined. The integration framework provides different adapters to handle the conversion of data from various proprietary APIs to XML format. Some examples of adapters include JDBC, HTTP, and so on. When a timer is defined as a trigger, then an adapter is not necessary. The timer starts the process after the defined time settings. The adapter converts the incoming data to XML messages, which are processed by the next phase. The integration framework always processes the data internally as an XML message, whatever the format of the incoming data is. The inbound phase hands over the XML message to the next phase, the processing phase. The handover from phase to phase is done via internal queues. The XML message containing the data is processed by the integration framework. Depending on how the step is configured, there might be calls to external systems or conditional processing. These calls might result in a change or enhancements to the data. At some point in the processing, the data is transformed into the XML format required by the receiving system, asynchronous step only. The rules for the data transformation were defined by the scenario developer using XSLT, Extensible Stylesheet Language Transformations. The data is still in XML format throughout the processing phase. The processing phase may perform other functions in addition to transforming the data. This depends on the business scenario. The final phase is the outbound phase. As soon as a receiver is defined, then the outbound phase only applies to asynchronous steps, in which there is a receiver system for the transformed data. If the whole process is managed inside of the processing phase, then there is an outbound and a receiver definition is not possible. The outbound phase receives the final XML from the processing phase, and the outbound adapter converts the data into the actual non-XML format required by the receiver. The adapter hands over the final data to the logical receiver system. The integration framework handles the transmission of the data reliably over the network. XML is a natural choice for integration as it was designed to describe and carry data in both a human and machine-readable format. Using self-interpretive tags makes XML almost a universal data format and a natural choice for open data interchange. XML documents contain elements within tags. If you are familiar with HTML, then an XML document will look familiar. In XML, the markup is contained within the tags, and the content is outside of the tags. XML always begins with a start tag element and ends with an end tag element. So let's look at the actual message from the integration framework. The XML message that the integration framework processes during a step contains different sections that are added along the way to produce the final message for the outbound phase. The body tag is what we are most interested in, as this contains the data within payload tags. There are different payload sections added at each phase of step processing. The payload types of the XML message depend to some extent on the step design, but can include type T, contains a description of the trigger for the step, type S, contains the incoming data from the sender converted to XML, type X shows any internal transformation of the sender message. This section only appears if you have designed a scenario to include an intermediate transformation during the step processing phase. Type C shows information regarding a call from the step to an external system, for example, a call to a SQL database. In this case, the result set from the query will be also shown. The type R section contains the final XML message at the end of the step processing. The type R2 section shows the receiver message in XML that will be handed over to the outbound adapter. This section is not completed until the final transformation of data. To summarize this unit, step processing involves three phases: inbound, processing, and outbound. The integration framework converts all data it receives to XML messages and processes data internally as XML messages. Additional payload sections are added to the XML message during step processing. This can include external calls to enrich the data, as well as the transformation of the data into a final XML representation. The final XML is handed over to the outbound phase and the adapter for transmission. In the next unit, you will see how to set up the integration framework as a development environment to start your scenario development. Thank you for attending this unit.